Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Gather Them Podcast. I'm your host Jerome, and I guess this isn't just any regular episode. These episodes that come out on Wednesday are going to be specifically tailored to media content. Any books, any movies, any TV shows, any music. Anything that I found interesting during the week or that I've been reviewing or listening to. Specifically, though, I do want to talk about one of my favorite children's shows, and you probably remember it from the 90s. You know, those cute, adorable digital monsters. I loved Digimon as a child, and something I didn't think I'd have access to as I am now an adult. But something else I did not think that Digimon would do, if it had still kept going, was give us a horror element, a show that was very much into the original theme work of what Digimon at the core is all about, the digital world and the human world being two separate entities. But I didn't think that they would use elements such as horror, AI, technology, and though I was disappointed with the ending, was actually really worth the watch. And I'm going to get into that. Let's go. So I think I'm going to start at the top. Something that really stood out to me was the music. The music was amazing throughout the show. A tip I did learn, though, was that if you are watching a show like Digimon, to pay attention to characters like Gammamon if you are learning Japanese, because the sentence structures tend to be shorter and the way Japanese works, well, let's just say most languages outside of English make more sense. But I thought the themes are really catchy. I thought that it really mirrored how the episodes were going to turn out. I didn't think initially that the episodes were going to have such a heavy horror element. And I guess in the sense of it's a children's show, but I'm an adult and I'm a little freaked out. I don't know. The show has a sense of running chills through your body, especially with the outro music. Monster Disco was such a jam on this show, especially as they rotated the show's outros. So they weren't consistently the same, which I find in Digimon to be a bit boring, honestly. I'm not a fan of the outros staying the same, or the music for that point. Getting spooked, and I guess the joy of hearing it by the end of the episode just left chills down my spine. Something else I was captivated by, and I think that captivates me each season, is the way each Digimon partners show up for their, well, partners. The design is often pretty innovative and different. I don't always like the design of the characters. This show was a show that had really great emotional depth. The range of emotions on this show, from how close the Digimon were to their partners to how their bonds were really showcasing true connection. And you did feel for these characters when things started to go awry. I think the voice acting was amazing. I think that the narrator, Naoto Taneka, I hope I'm saying his name correctly. Oh my gosh, he's like phenomenal narrator. Love him down. I found it interesting that each Digimon had their own quirks. I was particularly interested in Jellymon and the way she showed up in the season. I didn't know how to really digest her. I felt like Jellymon was a Digimon that was very demanding. I will say that she was always there for them. I will give her that. She had a very cool character design as well, jellyfish design all throughout. I loved the mega evolutions for all characters. I loved a Forimon very much giving, like in Forimon showing up in a deep sea diver suit. I think that was like really, or that being the character design, being like the thing that was actually really cool to watch. I was really taken aback by Gamamon having three champion forms. It kind of felt like this is what I maybe would have expected to see in a video game, but not on TV. I still love to see it. It just didn't make sense to me. I don't know if it made sense to you guys. If it did, let me know in the comments. I really am interested because I didn't really look into the show too much as I was watching because I wanted to make sure I could form my own idea of the show. So for me, I was like, all right, I'm gonna try to watch this. Yep. So I was doing a sub. So, there was stuff I was missing. Ghost Gamamon was pretty intense. That one out of the four, I guess it's four because he ended up staying within Gamamon. So I don't know. You had to have watched the show. Spoiler, this came out like a few years ago. It just left me a little confused. I don't know what that was about. It left me with more questions about Gamamon and how Ghost Gamamon formed together. I need to go back and watch the beginning again because Digimon's a very long show. It's a commitment. And you have to remember that the beginning of this show, you're not giving much of anything. You're just kind of given you're going to watch a bunch of episodic torturous moments where the villain of the week is in some way torturing a child, but by the end it'll get resolved essentially. Speaking of which, I thought it was a very interesting choice to have the episodic episodes be a choice than the serialized. Eventually it just kind of got to the point where I was like, well, why are these Digimon coming into the world? Why are they, coming in more frequently as the season goes on? The Digimon are creating more and more havoc and more damage throughout the city. It started to feel a little like, well, where's this going? I think the monster of the approach worked. I'll say why at the end, but I did want some more long term investment as I started to get bored throughout the series a bit. Some of the episodes left me a little scarred, I'm not going to lie. One episode in particular, Clown, was an episode that featured Piedmon I saw in season one, Digimon Adventure. Both menacing, but this one menacing to the point of killing kids for sport by any means necessary, essentially, and using other menacing Digimon, including one that looks like Satan, to kill kids. It was very interesting, which is why, again, I was like, who is this show for? Like, is this show for me? Is it for a child? Is it for who? Yet, through those episodes, it felt refreshing and experimental. It kept me glued. I watched from beginning to end and stuck with the season. The one thing I did leave disappointed with was the ending. The ending was absolutely anticlimactic. The show overall had a weird pacing. There were times where we were getting snippets of information. There were red herrings. There were times where we thought that, again, evil Digimon like Lilithmon were showing up. These are Digimon that you think would have some larger scheme or play, especially when they would threaten to come back. By episode 60, I kind of felt like, well, am I ever going to see these Digimon again? And spoiler alert, you don't. Another part of the show that I found to be very compelling was the themes of AI and AI holograms showing up throughout the show. The exploration of holograms to me felt like an early precursor or early idea around generative AI, or because of how misunderstood, feared, and manipulated these Digimon become. It seems kind of like that way with generative AI in our current present day, 2026, where people are have made videos and have made content on platforms like Sora or Nano Banana, to name a few, and this content gets spread around and used for misinformation, which ultimately impacts the individual and or public perception around AI and what its usefulness is to society. It's kind of that way with Digimon, and we ultimately get to see how these Digimon then begin to feel othered and how the world becomes even more aggressive towards them. And I don't know if that is in any way a precursor or a telling of what's, to come, like a prediction. We never know what's going to happen. But I just find it very interesting that it starts to question these concepts around safety, trust, reality. A lot of times the Digimon are saying that they're security bots. A lot of times, or security holograms. A lot of times they're saying that they are there to help with like just some task, or making up the humans are making up some lie or excuse, a reason why they're there, and everyone's just supposed to go along and trust it because these holograms just pop up, even though it's known that they're threatening. Some of these Digimon are really great at covering their cases. I think that they do a really great job at hiding in plain sight, and that makes the season even more insidious, creepy, and it just leaves you feeling with violated in some ways. I think about the episode with their friend that comes, I believe it was from America, and this Digimon, Eismon, ends up possessing their body, and a bunch of eyes formulate around their skin, and how they're just touching, and it just is so visceral and nasty, and the way in which they're trying to remove the eyes but the eyes don't come off. It starts to feel like there are these moments where the supernatural becomes the techno kind of paranormal, or and technology becomes this like thing that we try to embrace, but there's still an underlying fear of what it can do. Humans are just misunderstanding the use of Digimon, which is that they're just Digimon. They're not tools or objects. They're actually living, but on a digital plane. I also found it interesting that this season aired in 2021, which just so happened to be during the global coronavirus or COVID pandemic. I can't imagine what it would have been like watching this at this time because people were very much isolated. So, again, children, you know, doing work from home, and parents doing work from home, or just wanting to get out and spending more time together. Those things were happening. But that's the time also when people had more access to social media, more access to streaming, more access to things that kept them busy during isolation. And the fear in which that this show creates, it's just very unsettling for the time. I mean, the themes of disconnection, isolation, digital ghost, the idea that like data can become corrupt and misshapen and used against you. These things were things that started to become more of an issue during the pandemic with the rise of access to the internet due to remote capabilities. We all had to go remote. This season aired during a time of global lockdown and digital dependency. I go back to say because, like in Digimon, everything kind of goes back to normal where the worlds become separate. It almost feels like an illusion of like, did that really happen? Especially after each episode, leaves you with that feeling of, did that really happen? Did I really go through that? Am I actually the person that is here to tell the tale? Especially when there are episodes where characters don't even remember how they got there, who these Digimon were, don't even know what Digimon are, completely have erased memories. it was a pretty traumatic season to watch. I wonder if it left us to maybe contemplate if this merge between technology and humanity is part of what shaped the emotional tone of the show. It kind of felt like the Digimon became dependent on the humans for that connection. At least it seemed that way in the end when they meet Quantumon, who explains that they're pretty much doing all of this or have sent Digimon to the digital world to get information on humans' emotions, which I thought was a very cheap way to kind of end the show. And it also makes me kind of raise my tin hat theories as to whether or not the show is trying to say something about the world in which we live in. I will say I left the show feeling seen in these stories of horror, technology, emotional intimacy between the Digimon and even among the friend group. I left feeling like the friend group really did depend on each other in a healthy way. I didn't think that, for the most part, I think that the character development could have been better. I feel like Senpai pretty much stayed the same throughout the show. Kiro was pretty much afraid of like everything. I thought that would get better. Sometimes I get hopeful. There were episodes where he did shine, and I think that that was great. But I wonder if it also spoke to how grounded in reality the show actually is. When you think about it, you always wonder, well, what is it that I'm actually afraid of? There's always something that leaves you spooked when you're all alone with your thoughts and there's no one else around. You know, the I'm not afraid of anything. But I felt like this show really touched on a range of fears, including what happens when technology does go unchecked. Something I really relate to is the way in which the Digimon franchise has evolved alongside my own identity. As I watch old episodes, I tend to have moments of nostalgia mixed with happiness that I still have access to viewing the content. But what I realize is that each season provides a different way to engage us in the way in which technology shows up in our world and how we understand it, alongside the ways in which our own fears, emotions, and desires can also either guide us, cloud our judgment, or lead us on the path to humanitarian destruction. It's always not so much the Digimon alone, and that's what's always been somewhat the scary part, but it's how in each iteration the Digimon become either more menacing or they become less cuddly in some way. It almost mirrors life and identity in some ways, in the ways in which we go through seasons. And I don't know, every time I watch Digimon, it kind of brings back those memories of feeling understood or connected to in some way. What I am looking ahead to talking about more is Digimon Breakbeat. It's a new season that is now out, and I'm not exactly sure if it's going to have the same amount of episodes as Ghost Game, but what I am interested in is whether or not the story will continue to have a serialized plot. So far, the episodes have connected in some way, but I am curious as to whether or not the series will pull through. The characters are still growing on me. I will say that for sure. Thanks for listening. And listen, tune in every Wednesday. I'll be here talking about a different show or media. I think I really want this to be a space for fluid exploration. And I thank you for coming on this journey with me, especially if you're interested. If you like this podcast episode, please let me know in the comments. And I hope to talk to everyone again soon. Well, on that note, I'm out of here. Take care. And don't forget to share your thoughts on what you thought of Ghost Game, or did you interpret something differently than I did? Let me know. I'll talk to everyone soon.